YouTuber Kevin Paffrath is one of the Democrats hoping to unseat Governor Gavin Newsom in the recall election. He joins us now. And Kevin, let's launch right in. First, tell us why you're running, why you'd like to be the next governor of California.
I don't want to see my 3- and 5-year-old in 20 years ask me, Dad, why did you raise us in a state that's now bankrupt? The reality is, when we look around, we've got major human crises happening. We don't have enough water. We don't have affordable housing. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, and we're ranked 20th in schools, and we've got people dying on our streets. We need massive action. We've got a legislature and a governor who cheer small ideas and small solutions. These aren't working. We've done small solutions for the last 20 years. People are voting with their feet. They're leaving. We need a new governor that can bring new change to California and focus on solving Californian issues. And I believe I'm that person as a JFK-style Democrat, bringing solutions to solve the middle-of-the-road problems we have.
Well, let's talk about homelessness. You've made that a top priority. How would you tackle that issue that's so huge in California?
Absolutely. 2-step process. Number 1, we have to provide the services that people need who are dying on our streets. So number 1, what we do is we build 80 emergency facilities as soon as practically possible, ideally within 60 days. What we do is we provide food, shelter, think Javits Center style COVID shelter. In New York, we were able to build a 3,000 bed facility within 2 weeks. We could do that here 80 times throughout California. We can then provide drug support, mental health support, educational resources. We could provide resources with nonprofits by coordinating everybody in one place. These are optional facilities. The only rule is nobody's allowed to sleep on the streets after 60 days. But at least now we have infrastructure to service the people who need help. Setting up infrastructure and helping people is just part 1, though. We got to actually move on to solving the causes of homelessness. So once we're done with part 1, we move on to the causes of homelessness. 70% of people become homeless because of economic reasons, which means we need to address, and then of course they end up with drug issues or mental health issues. We got to address housing, crime, and our schools. And this is where I will work with the legislature to make sure we finally teach financial education in our schools. We finally teach mental health in our schools. We actually have options for mental health treatment. And we take a post-war boom-style effort to make sure we can build hundreds of thousands of new homes throughout the areas outside of our cities to make sure we finally have affordable housing again so that people aren't fleeing to Texas or Florida. And I want to get that done, these 2 plans, in my first year.
Well, you've also pushed to eliminate income taxes for households earning less than $250,000. Tell us about that plan.
So that plan is going to be more of a 5-year plan. So 1-year plan is the first term after a recall. And then there's another 4-year term if we do well with part 1 and 2 and I get reelected. Then we can go on to longer term solutions. We have to build out our future schools that teach financial education and get people careers after 2 years. It's going to take a little bit of time to ramp up. But what happens when people learn careers and they're able to get, and they learn financial education and they get career educated, is people can break the cycle of poverty. We can break the cycle of crime. People right now who go to prison, for example, cost the state $240,000 for 2 years. Well, if we can educate them and actually get them a career as an electrician or a plumber, an engineer or an architect or a nurse or whatever, now they're not on Medi-Cal. Now we're not spending $16 billion on welfare anymore. Now we're not spending all this money we do on poverty programs in California because California's thinking too small. And then once we start saving money by running our state more efficiently, by actually investing in Californians, this is what JFK did, invest in the people first, then lower taxes. Then my goal is by the end of 5 years, we can ratchet those income taxes down because most of our income taxes actually come from people making over $250,000. So we want to give a break to everybody making under $250,000 by reducing those taxes to 0.
So is this sort of a balancing the books thing? Because ultimately the plans you're talking about take money. How are you going to pay for it?
It is. So we have to invest first. Step 1, we got to end the high-speed rail. The high-speed rail it's going to cost $100 billion. We're going to have to work with Joe Biden on some of this because some of it is federal funding. But the high-speed rail has a 71-year break even. That does not make any sense. Economically and environmentally, it's a disaster of a project. There's a lot of lobbying money in it. The project's got to end. We want to reallocate as much money as we can from this to our homeless issues and to our schooling crisis. We've got $12 billion already for homelessness. Governor Newsom wants to spend $3,000 a month for a motel room for a homeless person. That doesn't get them the treatment they need. That doesn't get them the help they need. That just gets them shelter for $3,000 a month. That's nuts. My mortgage isn't even $3,000 a month. That's insane. So we got to bring scale and economics to government. We've got money for homelessness. We've got money in the state of California. We just got to stop squandering it, trying to buy votes for Governor Newsom, actually spend it appropriately. But yeah, look, some things are going to require an additional investment. We might have to do a bond raise that we would approve with the legislature. And then our plans are to pay that down. And once we run more efficiently, lower taxes. We have to invest first, straighten the ship, and then lower taxes.
And legalize gambling, you're for that here in California. Is that part of the income plan?
It is. We believe that legalizing gambling could raise between $6 to $8 billion of tax revenue per year, as well as we've got other programs with our housing to build more homes that we think are going to raise around $16 billion per year. We think we can run schools much more efficiently in our future schools, saving around $30 billion a year. So we've got a lot of revenue sources that start trickling out, as well as reductions in welfare and that within the first 5 years. But in terms of gambling, look, I'm tired of people leaving California to take their vacation and tourism dollars to either Macau or Vegas. Why don't they stay in California? Why don't we have Las Vegas style strips up and down California and maybe in our new developments that we build outside of our cities so we can create new jobs, new sources of entertainment, restaurants, and spending for folks. And, then you always get the typical naysayer response, which is something like, "Oh, but if you legalize gambling, then you're gonna have more people with gambling addictions." Well, then guess what? Deal with the mental health problems. We got to build out the mental health infrastructure to make sure we can help prevent those things from happening and then deal with them when they do happen. But the last thing we need is a government that's just going to tell people how to live their lives. We got to get the government out of people's lives. We got to simplify regulations and stop telling people what they can't do.
Let's jump to the present, talk about COVID. Your stance on vaccine mandates, mask mandates?
I'm a big fan of vaccines. I think everybody should get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. I want to vaccinate my children as soon as possible. But Oxford University just last week told us that vaccinated people are still spreading Delta as much as people who do not have a vaccine. This is a problem. This means we need to think of a multi-pronged approach to make sure we can finally end Delta. My strategy is the following. Number one, I encourage masking, but we need to use better masks, ideally N95s or KN95s. Very, very important. If people can't afford them, the government should supply them for them. Number two, I think we should incentivize vaccines, not mandate vaccines at a state level, but incentivize them. Offer $250 for every new adult vaccination. Number three, we have to focus on the fact that we need HEPA filtration. There's a reason planes are still flying. It's because the COVID clouds can be eliminated with proper HEPA filtration in our indoor spaces where people are getting sick, like restaurants or schools or office buildings. And this is especially important since we can't have vaccinated children yet because we don't have approved vaccines yet for children. So absolutely, we need ventilation and better quality masks in our schools. I personally, in terms of mandates, believe the only mandates that could come from the governor's office would be air filtration and HEPA filtration requirements. And I believe that mask and vaccine mandates should come from any local community at a building by building decision. So that way each hospital, each school, each business, each of them individually with their communities decide on vaccine and mask mandates. And they should have a notice posted on what their requirements are.
Well, the governor's had a year and a half of handling this. How would you rank his handling of the pandemic so far, and how would you do things differently?
Oh my gosh, it's horrible. I don't believe the governor pays attention to the science that we have. We knew within 30 days of the COVID 1.0 or alpha variant, the original variant, that lockdowns weren't necessary, that what we needed was to prevent the buildup of a COVID cloud, that people weren't getting sick outdoors. Look at the Sturgis motorcycle rally. People weren't getting sick outdoors. They were getting sick when they went into the bars, when they went into the venues that had no airflow, no ventilation, no filtration. And when we combine good masking, not just facial coverings, with HEPA filtration, then we can stop the spread of COVID. This is very important so we can finally take the pressure off of our hospitals. But what did Governor Newsom do instead? Instead, Governor Newsom locked down our businesses for nearly 18 months at the same time as he was dining with lobbyists at the French Laundry, at the same time as his children were able to go to private school, and at the same time he was accepting donations from Netflix as co-CEO so that Netflix could get emergency exemptions from the governor to stay open while 1/3 of our California restaurants went bankrupt. And they didn't even waive the LLC or S corporation fees for them. It's disgraceful. And so I'm concerned that if we continue to see this ramp up in Delta, that we're going to go back to lockdowns under Newsom. My policy is no lockdowns. Follow the science. Encourage vaccines. Use better masks and supply better masks for those who can't afford them. And make sure that we have HEPA filtration in areas where people cannot be vaccinated or cannot be vaccinated or masked.
Got to ask you about the wildfires. What's your plan to protect Californians from this growing threat?
Well, first thing is we actually have to do what we say we're going to do. Governor Newsom told us he was going to conduct controlled burns and manage our forests. Instead, NPR had to expose him about a month ago. NPR came out with a piece and said, Governor Newsom misled Californians, overstating wildfire prevention by 690%. The same day that piece came out, we found out that Governor Newsom's administration tried to cover up that they ever made the original promise. This is exactly why I'm running in this recall election, because even though I encourage everyone to vote for me on the second question, I personally also believe yes on recall is a good idea, so we can finally have a leader who can lead our state. Here's how we lead in fire prevention. Number one, we have to follow the model that Portugal took advantage of. In 2017, Portugal had devastating wildfires. 65 people died. Portugal decided that's it. And The Economist reported on this and broke down their exact strategy. They conducted emergency controlled burns to manage their forests. And since then, they have not had a single devastating wildfire. On the other hand, we have a governor who has misled us on forest management. And now we have devastating wildfires. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we ramp up our efforts on controlled burns. $35 an acre for controlled burns, $1,600 an acre to fight a wildfire. It's logical and it makes economical sense, and it's better for our environment and our endangered species and the people's lives who get lost in wildfires to make sure we prioritize controlled burns, and that's what I'll do.
Well, finally, tell voters why you think you deserve to be the next governor.
Absolutely. Well, my entire plan is outlined at meetkevin.com. Folks can see me debate other individuals under pressure at the KCRA 3 debate that I was in yesterday. It's on YouTube. It's on social media. They can see my entire plan at meetkevin.com. And when they look at my plan, they'll realize these are really Californian issues and solutions. They're not vague ideas. They're not vague promises. They're very specific plan-oriented solutions for how we can actually solve our housing crisis, our water crisis, fire crisis, schooling crisis, crime crisis, and of course, end homelessness. These all have to be done together. The problems we have in California aren't Republican, they're not Democratic, they're human issues, they're Californian issues. And that's what I'm running as, a JFK-style Democrat with human solutions for the massive problems that we have. And I hope people will see my plan at meetkevin.com and vote for me.
Well, Kevin Paffrath, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. For more information about the recall election and the other candidates vying for Governor Newsom's seat, you can head to kpix.com/recall.